White woman calls cop on black girl, speechless when her mom arrives and she's the FBI chief. A warm Saturday afternoon in Willow Creek promised sunshine and laughter, until one phone call threatened to shatter it all. Can you imagine the shock when an 11-year-old's simple ice cream outing turns into a nightmare? Danielle, wearing bright yellow sneakers, was just minding her own business outside a small ice cream shop. No one could have guessed that a single unfounded accusation would plunge the community into a firestorm of outrage, revealing a hidden connection with the highest levels of law enforcement. The ensuing confrontation would leave a neighborhood in shock, a family tested, and one deeply prejudiced caller scrambling for excuses. Little did she know, karma had something spectacular in store for her. Willow Creek was the kind of suburban town where everyone knew each other's name, at least superficially. Most residents prided themselves on being open-minded, neighborly folks, though in reality, bias often lurked beneath the surface. The town was lined with picket fences, manicured lawns, and brick facades. The old coffee shop, Manny's Brew, sat on the corner of Maple and Foster Streets, not too far from the local ice cream parlor known as Sweet Scoops. It was the kind of place where families went on weekends, especially when the weather turned bright and comfortable. That particular Saturday, the sun beamed down like a spotlight, illuminating the pastel-colored storefronts and the bright green grass in the municipal park across the street. Just around 3 p.m., the local children's soccer league had finished their weekend game, and parents flocked to the ice cream shop for a celebratory treat. 11-year-old Danielle Hamilton was no different, except she didn't just come from the soccer game. She had spent the morning reading in the public library. She had a love for mysteries, especially the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew's series, which fed her budding curiosity about investigating the world around her. Danielle, Danny to her close friends, had asked her friend Tess to join her for a cone. Tess was waiting inside, ordering a swirl of chocolate and vanilla. Meanwhile, Danny loitered outside, leaning against the bright pink wall of Sweet Scoops, her neon yellow sneakers tapping gently against the sidewalk. She pulled out her phone to check messages from her mom. Agent Mara Hamilton was out of town for an important Federal Bureau of Investigation summit in Quantico, Virginia. At least that's what Danny believed at that moment, so she was staying with her Aunt Clarice. Danny was a quiet kid, but always polite, believing in courtesy, yes, please, thank you, and holding the door for older folks. In her short 11 years, she'd occasionally encountered that odd look from strangers who seemed to judge her simply because she was a black girl in a predominantly white town, but she usually shrugged those off, focusing instead on her bigger dreams, like becoming an investigator or an FBI agent like her mom. It was about 3:05 p.m. when a tall woman with meticulously curled blonde hair stepped out of Manny's Brew. The woman carried a latte in one hand and her phone in the other. She went by the name Michelle Saunders. She glanced around the street, her gaze eventually landing on Danny. Michelle's lips pursed slightly, almost in disapproval. She sipped her latte and dialed a number. From Danny's vantage point, she couldn't hear Michelle's voice, but she noticed the lady's eyes on her. Danny figured maybe the woman was waiting for someone or maybe recognized her from somewhere. It happened sometimes. People looked, recognized her as Marcia Hamilton's daughter, and asked all sorts of questions about the FBI. But nothing in Michelle's eyes suggested warmth or curiosity. Instead, there was something cold and suspicious there. A minute later, Michelle started walking in Danny's direction. She wore a pinstriped blouse, black dress pants, and stiletto heels that clicked sharply against the pavement. When Michelle was a few feet away, she slowed. Danny smiled politely, but Michelle's gaze remained narrow. "Excuse me, young lady," Michelle said, her tone crisp and standoffish. "What are you doing here?" Danny, taken aback, glanced over her shoulder to see if Michelle was talking to someone else. No one was behind her. "I'm just waiting for my friend," she said quietly. Michelle's eyes dropped to Danny's bright sneakers and then back up to her face. "Waiting for your friend?" she echoed, sarcasm dripping from her words. "Right." An awkward silence ensued. Danny couldn't fathom why this woman would question her. She looked down at her phone, trying to appear polite yet disinterested, hoping the conversation would end. But Michelle wasn't done. "I've been noticing you standing here, looking in people's cars," Michelle said. "I saw you earlier, and you seemed like you were checking whether cars were locked." Danny's eyes widened. "I haven't touched any cars. I was just leaning against the wall." Michelle shook her head. I think you were casing them, she said in a low tone, as though she was revealing some dark secret. You know, seeing if there's anything valuable inside. Don't try to deny it. I'm not, Danny tried to protest, but her words withered under the woman's sharp gaze. Inside Sweet Scoops, Tess was still in line, blissfully unaware of the scene unfolding outside. Meanwhile, a few passers-by noticed Michelle's pointed finger and Danny's shrinking stance. However, no one intervened yet, uncertain of the situation. Well, I'm not going to tolerate suspicious behavior in my town, Michelle snapped. We have enough problems with theft around here. Danny felt her heart pound in her chest. She'd never had someone accuse her of something so baseless, at least not so directly. She wanted to call Aunt Clarice or her mom, but fear and embarrassment rooted her to the spot. Then the unthinkable happened. Michelle whipped out her phone and dialed. Danny could see the familiar 3-digit number on the screen, 911. Michelle pressed call without hesitation. Hello, yes, police? I'd like to report a suspicious individual, Michelle said, glaring daggers at Danny. Yes, I'm on Maple Street, outside the ice cream shop. The individual is a young black girl, maybe around 12. She's acting suspiciously around parked cars. Danny could feel her throat constrict, tears prickling her eyes. She had done nothing wrong. She was just a kid waiting for her friend, excited to get a scoop of strawberry ice cream. Now she was the subject of a police call that labeled her a potential criminal. Still on the phone, Michelle strolled a few steps away from Danny, saying, "Yes, please send an officer right away," then rattled off a description of her own clothing, presumably so the officers could identify her. At that moment, Tess stepped out of Sweet Scoops, holding 2 cones. She saw Danny's expression pale and trembling, and Michelle speaking animatedly on the phone. Tess walked up slowly, handing Danny her cone. "What's going on?" she whispered. Danny tried to keep it together. "She called the police on me," she muttered, her voice cracking. "For what?" Tess asked, stunned, following Michelle with her eyes as the woman paced back and forth a short distance away. I don't know," Danny answered truthfully, tears threatening to spill. "She thinks I was snooping around people's cars or something." "I wasn't. I was just waiting for you." Tess frowned. She was as shocked as Danny. She looked over her shoulder toward the entrance of Sweet Scoops, expecting an adult to intervene. Inside, Mr. Guzman, the owner, was busy serving customers. No one seemed fully aware of the gravity of what was happening outside. Michelle then got off the phone with an air of triumph. She stared down at Danny and Tess. "The police are on their way. Don't either of you move," she commanded. Tess took a step forward, her fists clenched. She was itching to say anything that would defend her friend, but Danny shook her head, signaling her to stay calm. They didn't want to escalate the situation further, especially since the cops were now on their way. Their ice cream started to melt in the afternoon sun. Danny's appetite evaporated. She clutched her phone, and in her desperation, she finally dialed her mom. Yes, her mom was out of town, but maybe she would pick up. Danielle's heart beat frantically as the phone rang. It went to voicemail. "That's it," Michelle smirked, overhearing the unsuccessful call. "Try calling whoever you want, little thief. The cops will settle this soon enough." Danny tried to keep from crying. She gently wiped a tear that escaped. Her mind whirled, questioning how quickly a normal day could turn into a nightmare. Tess placed an arm around her. For a brief moment, everything seemed surreal. "What if the cops don't believe me?" Danny whispered. Tess shook her head. "They have to. You did nothing wrong." But neither girl felt certain. They'd heard stories, sometimes baseless accusations could spiral, especially when preconceived biases were in play. As the wail of a distant siren pierced the air, Michelle's smirk deepened. She wore the grin of someone who believed she was performing a noble duty. Perhaps in her twisted worldview, a black child waiting for a friend was a threat to suburban peace. Tess looked around for any sign of an adult ally, but the sidewalk was emptying. The few people who had observed Michelle's actions either continued on their way or feigned ignorance. Sometimes fear makes bystanders
Standers choose silence over confrontation.
In the pit of her stomach, Danny wondered if her life was about to change irrevocably. She only hoped that reason would prevail, that once the police arrived, they'd see through Michelle's accusations. But deep down, she couldn't quell the anxiety that roiled within her. Little did Danny know, a far more powerful ally was about to enter the scene, one that would turn Michelle Saunders' smug world upside down. Hold on to your seats, because the twist coming next will leave you speechless, only on Dignity Diaries. The police cruiser pulled up to the curb in a swirl of flashing red and blue lights. Officer Barry Wilson stepped out first, adjusting his belt as he surveyed the situation. He was a robust man, about 40 years old, with kind eyes that suggested he'd rather be helping community members than responding to dubious calls. Nonetheless, he was on duty, and procedure demanded he assess the complaint thoroughly. Michelle hurried toward him, pointing back at Danny. "That's her," she snapped. She was snooping around people's vehicles, looking for stuff to steal. Officer Wilson lifted his gaze to the girl standing on the sidewalk. Danny looked small, frightened, and nothing like what he'd imagine a suspect to be, especially in broad daylight in a busy area. He immediately sensed something was off. However, he kept a neutral face, approached Danny and Tess, and said, "Afternoon, ladies.
Can I speak with you for a moment?" Danny swallowed hard.
"Yes, sir," she said, her voice shaking. She'd been taught to be respectful to police, but fear made her voice tremble.
Tess clung to Danny's arm, wanting to shield her friend from further distress. "Is it true you were hanging around the cars?" Officer Wilson asked carefully. He had to ask, it was standard procedure. Danny shook her head vehemently. "No, sir. I was just waiting for my friend Tess to come out with the ice cream. I didn't touch anyone's car. I promise." Tess nodded in agreement. "She was just waiting for me. She never left the spot." Michelle crossed her arms, stepping closer to the group. "Officer, I'm telling you, I saw her casing vehicles. She was looking inside windows. She was up to no good." A flicker of annoyance crossed Officer Wilson's face. "Ma'am, please give me a moment to speak with the kids." He then looked back at Danny. "Is there anyone we can call for you? A parent or guardian?" Danny took a shaky breath. "My mom is out of town, but my Aunt Clarice is home. I can give you her number." She fumbled with her phone, her fingers trembling so much she nearly dropped it. Michelle interjected again, her voice rising. "Out of town, huh? What a convenient excuse. These kids run around unsupervised. This is exactly how petty crime starts." Officer Wilson shot her a warning look, then, noticing Danny's distress, he said gently, "I'm going to call your aunt, okay? Just to make sure everything is all right." He took the number from Danny, stepped aside, and placed the call. A tense silence descended on the sidewalk. A second police cruiser arrived, with another officer, Officer Linda Markham, stepping out. She was Wilson's partner, a seasoned officer well respected in the department. Immediately, Markham picked up on the tension in the air. She approached slowly, her eyes drifting from Michelle's rigid posture to Danny and Tess, who looked near tears. While Officer Wilson conversed with Aunt Clarice on the phone, Officer Markham tried to diffuse the tension. "Everything okay here?" she asked, arching an eyebrow at Michelle. Michelle was all too eager to provide her version. "I called because this girl was trying to break into cars," Michelle insisted. "We have enough trouble with theft in Willow Creek. We can't let delinquents roam free." Markham studied Danny's posture, shoulders slumped, eyes wide with fear, and Tess, who was protectively standing by her friend. Something felt off about Michelle's accusation. Just then, Wilson returned, phone still in hand. "Ma'am," he said to Michelle, "I've spoken with the girl's aunt. She's on her way to clear things up." He turned to Danny. "Your aunt said she'll be here in about 10 minutes. Until then, I'd like you to just wait here, all right?" Danny nodded silently, relief mingling with anxiety. She wanted nothing more than for Aunt Clarice to come and rescue her from this humiliating fiasco. But Michelle wasn't satisfied. "Are you just going to let her go?"
You should be arresting her or at least taking her to the station for questioning, she said.
Officer Markham shot Michelle a look that conveyed patience wearing thin.
Ma'am, with all due respect, we have no concrete evidence of wrongdoing. There's no damage to cars, no stolen property. Unless you have a witness or additional proof, we have no grounds to arrest a child. Michelle huffed, her face turning a slight shade of red. She's lying, she insisted, pointing at Danny.
I know what I saw.
Suddenly, the door to Sweet Scoop swung open, and Mr. Guzman stepped out. He was a middle-aged man with a friendly smile and a noticeable limp. Rumors said he'd hurt his leg playing high school football years ago. Right now, though, his warm demeanor had turned somber. Officers, he said, addressing Wilson and Markham, I'm sorry to butt in, but this young lady comes here all the time with her friends. I assure you, she's never caused any trouble. My store security camera even points out here. He motioned to a small camera perched atop the window. It would have caught her if she was up to anything. Michelle blinked, her confidence visibly shaken. She had no idea there was a camera. Markham seized the opportunity. That's helpful, Mr. Guzman. Would you mind if we take a quick look at the footage? Not at all, he said. Please, come inside. Wilson nodded at Markham, indicating she should go check. Then, turning to Danny, he asked gently, Are you comfortable waiting here a bit longer? Once your aunt arrives, we'll figure this out. Danny nodded, feeling a tiny surge of relief that evidence might soon clear her name. Tess squeezed her friend's hand in solidarity. Meanwhile, Michelle stood there, arms crossed, blinking rapidly. If the security footage showed Danny doing nothing, what then? She glared at the ground as if searching for a new angle. Inside Sweet Scoops, Markham huddled over Mr. Guzman's security monitor. The footage was crystal clear. From the time Danny arrived with Tess until Michelle placed her call, Danielle never moved from her spot against the wall. She certainly hadn't touched or peered into any cars. She was simply standing there, occasionally looking around at passing pedestrians, but nothing that would indicate a crime. Markham let out a soft sigh. She returned outside, where Wilson was still ensuring tensions didn't escalate. Without a word, she gave him a slight shake of her head, telling him that there was nothing incriminating on the footage. Michelle saw that exchange and demanded, What did the camera show? Markham turned to her. It shows the girl simply standing there. There's no sign of attempted theft, no unusual behavior. She's exactly where she said she was the entire time. For a split second, Michelle was speechless. Then she attempted to recover. But maybe the camera angle missed it. Maybe she's done this before in other parts of town. Wilson exhaled, turning to face Michelle. Ma'am, as of now, we have no evidence of wrongdoing. I'm inclined to conclude this was a misunderstanding. Michelle looked like she wanted to argue further, but she noticed a small crowd gathering. Other shoppers and a few employees from neighboring shops were drawn by the police cars. She could feel their eyes on her, their unspoken questions about why a grown woman would call the cops on a girl with no proof. Just then, a sleek black SUV pulled up, parking right behind one of the cruisers. Aunt Clarice hopped out, her face etched with worry. She rushed over to Danny, pulling her into a hug. Baby, are you all right? She asked, checking her niece from head to toe. Danny nodded tearfully. I'm okay, Auntie. Just scared. Officer Wilson stepped forward to greet Clarice. Ma'am, thank you for coming, he said. I'm Officer Wilson. We responded to a call. Clarice cut him off with a polite but urgent tone. I understand. There's been some confusion. My niece is obviously innocent. She's not a thief. How do we resolve this? Before Wilson could answer, Michelle stepped in, face tight with defiance. Your niece was lurking around these cars. I saw her. Don't act like this was all a misunderstanding. Clarice squared her shoulders. She was not a tall woman, but she had a commanding presence. Miss, did you see my niece actually break into a car or take something from a car? Michelle's eyes darted to the side. She was about to, "I'm telling you." Clarice turned to Officer Wilson with a calm, measured tone. "Officer, you've checked the camera footage, correct?" Wilson nodded. "Yes, we did. There's no sign of wrongdoing. We're prepared to let Danny go home. As far as we can tell, there's no crime here." Clarice looked relieved, but she also noticed the tears still glimmering in Danny's eyes. "Thank you, officer. I'd like to take my niece home now. This has clearly been very traumatic for her." "Of course," Wilson said gently. "We just need to finalize our report, then she's free to go." Michelle, sensing she was losing ground, tried one last salvo. "This is outrageous. She was definitely up to something. If you're not going to arrest her, I want her out of here before she goes after another car." Clarice, with all the dignity she could muster, turned to Michelle. "We will leave, but I want to remind you that baseless accusations can have serious consequences." Michelle folded her arms, not wanting to concede her mistake. "Well, I'm just being a concerned citizen." Officer Markham guided Michelle aside, trying to calm her down. Danny, Tess, and Clarice walked over to Clarice's car. Officer Wilson followed to wrap up. As he spoke with Clarice about the details, Wilson gave Danny a reassuring nod. "I'm sorry you went through this," he said softly. "Try not to let it sour your view of the department." Danny nodded, still trembling but grateful for the officer's kindness. She climbed into the SUV with Tess, who placed a comforting hand on her arm. Clarice finished with the officer, then got in the driver's seat. As they drove away, Clarice's grip on the steering wheel was tight, her knuckles white. She glanced at Danny through the rearview mirror. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I'm so sorry that happened." Danny sniffled. "It's not your fault, Auntie. I've never had someone accuse me like that. She kept pointing at me, calling me a thief." Clarice's eyes flashed with protective anger. Some people let their prejudices run wild. She paused for a moment, then added, "But sometimes karma finds a way of exposing their flaws." Neither of them could guess how soon that karma would arrive, or the fact that Marcia Hamilton, Danny's mother, was far closer than they realized. That night, Danny lay awake at Aunt Clarice's house, replaying the day's events in her mind. Her body felt heavy with the fatigue of emotional stress. She stared at the floral-patterned wallpaper, tears pooling in her eyes. In a world that often felt safe thanks to the love of her mother, aunt, and her close-knit group of friends, she had just come face-to-face with blatant prejudice. Downstairs, Clarice was busy making phone calls. She wanted to inform Marcia about what had happened, but Mara hadn't answered her phone yet. It was not unusual for Marcia Hamilton, the FBI chief of a specialized bureau division, to be unreachable for hours, sometimes days, if she was in a classified briefing or field operation. But Clarice also knew her sister wouldn't be away for too long. She'd left word earlier that she'd try to wrap up her duties in Quantico earlier than expected. Around 9 p.m., Clarice's phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed Marcia, and she quickly answered. "Mara, thank goodness. I've been trying to reach you." On the other end, Marcia's voice was calm but tinged with concern. "I know, Clarice. I'm sorry. I've been tied up. I saw your messages. What's going on?" Clarice proceeded to explain in detail the events of the afternoon, the baseless accusation by Michelle Saunders, the phone call to the police, how they found no wrongdoing, and how Danny was shaken. Mara listened quietly, but Clarice could sense the tension building. When Clarice finished, Marcia's voice was resolute. "I'm coming home tomorrow morning. My meeting here is basically wrapped up. I'll catch the earliest flight out. Give Danny a hug for me and tell her I love her." Clarice nodded into the phone. "She needs you. She's trying to be strong, but she's definitely hurt." "Trust me," Mara said. "I'll make this right." After the call, Clarice exhaled deeply, relief washing over her. She went upstairs to check on Danny, only to find her niece quietly sobbing into her pillow. Clarice sat on the bed, pulling Danny close. "Your mom will be home tomorrow," she whispered. "Everything will be fine, sweetie." Danny clung to her aunt. "I just want this to go away. I hate feeling like I did something wrong even though I didn't. Clarice stroked Danny's hair.
I know. Sometimes people make terrible assumptions, but we'll stand up for ourselves, okay?
Danny nodded, and for a while, Clarice stayed by her side, letting her cry out the remnants of fear and frustration until she drifted into a restless sleep.
The next morning, a gray sedan pulled into the driveway just after dawn.
Marcia Hamilton stepped out, wearing a crisp navy blue blazer and matching slacks, her usual travel attire. Though her posture was composed, her eyes blazed with a quiet fury. She headed into the house, luggage in tow, and found Clarice in the kitchen brewing coffee. They hugged briefly, and Clarice whispered, "She's still asleep."
"It's been rough for her."
Marcia nodded, her jaw set. "I'll go see her."
"Thanks for everything, Clarice."
Upstairs, she opened the door to Danny's room. The girl stirred, blinking sleepily, then she spotted her mom and bolted upright, tears of relief spilling down her cheeks. "Mom," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around Marcia.
Mara held her tightly.
"I heard what happened.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that."
Danny sniffled, burying her face in her mother's shoulder.
"It was awful. She looked at me like I was a criminal."
Mara sat on the bed with her daughter still in her arms.
"That woman was wrong, and it's not your fault. Don't ever doubt that." She gently smoothed Danny's hair back. "But I promise you, we're going to address this." "What do you mean?" Danny asked, her voice a little steadier now. Mara inhaled.
As an FBI chief, she'd seen and dealt with countless injustices over her career. This was personal. "I mean, we're not just going to let this lady walk away without understanding the consequences of her actions.
She traumatized you. She needs to be held accountable."
"But the police already decided there wasn't a crime," Danny pointed out.
Mara nodded.
"True, and they can't charge her with a crime unless she filed a false police report.
But she definitely made a malicious call. There might be some recourse." Danny's brows furrowed. "I just want to forget it."
Marcia held her daughter's gaze.
"I understand, baby. If you want me to let it go, I will. But if you're okay with it, I want to see if we can ensure she doesn't do this to anyone else."
After a moment, Danny managed a small, determined nod.
"Okay."
Mara smiled softly, proud of her daughter's resolve.
"Good.
First, we'll go to the station together and gather the official report. Then I may have a little talk with her."
"She's not going to expect me." Danny's eyes widened. "You're going to talk to that woman?"
"I might," Marcia said, a glimmer in her eye.
"But first, let's gather the facts." Later that morning, Mara drove to the Willow Creek Police Department with Danny in tow.
The station was a modest brick building with large windows, flanked by a neatly trimmed lawn. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink.
Approaching the front desk, Marcia introduced herself. "Good morning, I'm Mara Hamilton. This is my daughter, Danielle. We're here to see the report from yesterday's incident on Maple Street."
The desk sergeant, a middle-aged man named Sergeant Keyes, blinked in recognition. "Agent Hamilton," he said with a respectful nod.
Word traveled fast. Many local law enforcement officers knew of Marcia's position within the FBI, though she rarely exercised that knowledge in day-to-day affairs.
"Of course, we can get you a copy of the preliminary report."
Officer Wilson and Markham handled that call.
Within minutes, they were ushered into a small conference room, where Officer Markham soon joined them.
She gave Danny a warm smile. "Hi there. Glad to see you're doing okay."
Then, turning professional, she nodded at Mara.
"Agent Hamilton, I have the file right here. It's a simple incident report, no charges."
"We concluded no crime was committed." Marcia maintained a neutral expression.
"I see. And the caller, Michelle Saunders, did she provide any official statement?" Markham opened the folder.
"She gave a brief verbal statement, claiming she saw Danielle looking into cars.
No physical evidence supported her claim, so we let it go.
She left after we concluded there was nothing else to do."
Marcia nodded, scanning the report. No formal complaint was filed against Michelle for making a false call? Markham shook her head. We typically only file that if we have proof the call was knowingly false.
Most of the time, these calls are categorized under concerned citizen calls, especially when the caller insists they believe they saw suspicious activity.
Marcia set the report down. I understand.
However, this situation was distressing and humiliating for my daughter.
The security footage clearly showed she was just standing there. I'd like to speak with Miss Saunders if possible.
Markham exchanged a glance with the desk sergeant through the glass window.
We can't just hand out personal addresses, but she's a resident of Willow Creek.
The best we can do is try to mediate if you want to file a formal complaint for harassment. Marcia considered her options. Filing a harassment complaint might be a route, but it could become a drawn-out legal matter.
Another part of her wanted to see if Miss Saunders was even remotely remorseful. If I file a complaint, do we have to wait for it to go through the local judge for a hearing?
Yes, that's correct,
Markham replied. But if Miss Saunders wants to meet voluntarily, we can arrange a mediation session at the station.
In that case, both parties can discuss the issue with an officer present.
Danny shifted uncomfortably.
The idea of facing Michelle again twisted her stomach with anxiety. Sensing her daughter's unease, Marcia placed a reassuring hand on Danny's shoulder.
Are you okay with the mediation, honey? Danny swallowed.
I'm scared, but I want her to know she heard me.
Maybe she'll think twice next time.
Marcia nodded, pride shining in her eyes.
Then let's do it. She looked at Markham. Please arrange a mediation. If Miss Saunders refuses to come, I'll proceed with the complaint.
I'm sure the security footage will demonstrate she had no justification for her call. Markham paused, then said quietly, I'll do my best to set that up.
It might be a day or two.
Meanwhile, if you have any other concerns, feel free to reach out.
We're sorry this happened, Danielle.
Danny offered a small, grateful smile.
Thank you.
After gathering the necessary paperwork, Marcia and Danny left the station. Outside, a light breeze rustled the trees.
Are you all right?
Mara asked, noticing her daughter's silent demeanor.
Danny shrugged. I just want to be a normal kid again. I wish it never happened. Mara placed an arm around her. You are a normal kid. What happened isn't your fault.
Sometimes people let their biases take over, but this is how we stand up for ourselves. Danny pressed closer to her mom, feeling safe for the first time since the incident. She didn't love the idea of facing Michelle, but she wanted closure. Deep inside, there was a faint spark of curiosity. How would Michelle react when she found out that Danny's mother was not just a random parent but an FBI chief? News spread quickly through Willow Creek's grapevine that someone, an FBI agent, no less, had taken issue with a resident calling the cops on a child. Michelle Saunders soon heard that the police wanted her to come in for a friendly mediation session. Initially, she scoffed at the idea. Why would I mediate with that family? She huffed to a friend over the phone. I'm not apologizing for caring about my community. Her friend, Karen, tried to calm her. Michelle, are you sure you want to ignore the request? I heard the mother is a high-ranking FBI official. You might want to be careful. But Michelle was adamant. I did nothing wrong. If they push me, I'll just say I had every right to call. It's my civic duty if I suspect a crime. They can't make me apologize for that. Nevertheless, Michelle felt a gnawing sense of unease. She didn't like confrontation, especially when the other party had legal expertise. Her big fear was that she might face some penalty if an investigation concluded she made a malicious call. Under pressure, she eventually relented and told Officer Markham she would attend the mediation, albeit grudgingly. Over at Aunt Clarice's house, Danielle and Marcia were taking a quiet evening walk in the backyard beneath the sprawling oak trees that dotted the property. The smell of freshly cut grass mingled with the cool night air. How do these mediations usually go, Mom? Danny asked, hugging herself as a light breeze brushed past. Marcia exhaled. They're civil discussions, facilitated by an officer.
Each side presents their version.
The officer tries to see if a resolution, like an apology, can be reached. It's not a court, so no one is compelled to do anything, but it can help avoid legal battles.
Danny nodded. Do you really think she'll apologize? Marcia's lips curved into a tight line.
I can't say for sure, but whether or not she does, we'll make sure she understands the gravity of what she did. The next day, the station confirmed the mediation was set for Wednesday at 4 p.m. Danielle was anxious, but she found solace in knowing her mother, strong, composed, and deeply protective, would be by her side. Wednesday arrived, and the weather felt as tense as Danny's nerves, overcast skies and a cold drizzle that tapped against the windshield as Marcia drove them to the station. Danny clutched her mother's hand, heart thumping. Inside the Willow Creek Police Department, they were directed to a conference room with white walls, fluorescent lighting, and a round wooden table. Officer Markham was already seated, wearing a patient smile. At her side were some papers and a laptop for taking notes. A moment later, Michelle Saunders entered, hair pinned up in a tight bun, her posture stiff. She wore a beige trench coat over a stylish blouse and skirt, an outfit that exuded professional poise, yet her eyes darted nervously around the room, landing briefly on Danny with a flicker of annoyance. Then she turned her gaze to Marcia. For a moment, the tension was palpable. Marcia remained steady, meeting Michelle's gaze with calm composure.
She then extended a hand.
Mrs. Saunders, I'm Mara Hamilton, Danielle's mother.
Michelle hesitated, then shook Marcia's hand with forced politeness.
Michelle, she said curtly. Officer Markham cleared her throat, signaling they should all take a seat.
Thank you for coming, everyone. This meeting is to address the incident on Maple Street involving Miss Saunders' call to the police about Danielle. Michelle folded her hands on the table.
I believe I did nothing wrong, she began. I saw suspicious behavior and I reported it. Mara kept her voice measured.
I understand you believed you saw something, but the security footage showed otherwise. Danielle was simply standing outside the ice cream shop.
Michelle's lips thinned.
Well, maybe the footage didn't capture everything. I know what I saw. Officer Markham interjected. Mrs. Saunders, we reviewed multiple angles. There's no indication Danielle was anywhere near the vehicles. Are you certain you weren't mistaken?
Michelle opened her mouth, then closed it, perhaps recalling the thoroughness of the footage. It could have been, well, I might have confused her with someone else. I saw a girl in a bright jacket or something moving between the cars earlier.
Danny's eyes widened.
I wasn't wearing a jacket, just my t-shirt, and I didn't leave that spot.
Michelle avoided Danny's eyes. Look, I'm a concerned resident.
I saw a young girl alone, loitering, and there's been a string of break-ins around Willow Creek.
Mara tilted her head. Have there been any arrests, any suspects that look like my daughter?
Michelle flustered.
I don't have that information. I just saw what I saw.
A moment of silence, then Markham said, Mrs. Saunders, Danielle was deeply affected by this.
She's only 11, and the accusation was serious. Is there anything you'd like to say to her?
Michelle glanced at Danny, her expression remaining stubborn. I suppose I'm sorry if she felt scared.
That wasn't my intention. But I was just being vigilant. Marcia's calm mask slipped slightly, revealing a flash of anger.
You humiliated my daughter. You called the police on her without any basis.
That's not just being vigilant, that's being reckless and prejudiced. If Danielle had been a white girl in the same situation, would you have reacted the same way? Michelle stiffened, cheeks flushing. Are you calling me a racist? Mara held her gaze, unwaveringly. I'm asking you to consider whether her race influenced your judgment.
Because if you genuinely saw someone else, you had ample time to observe.
Instead, you singled out my daughter. Officer Markham's posture tightened, anxious about the confrontation. Let's keep this constructive, please. The point of mediation is to clear the air, find understanding. Michelle's gaze flickered with defensiveness.
I will not be labeled a racist. I have every right to call the police if I suspect a crime.
Marcia inhaled slowly, trying to keep calm for Danny's sake. No one's taking away your right to call the police,
but you should be absolutely certain before you weaponize that call. You saw an 11-year-old girl and, based on your own biases, conscious or not, you assume she was there to steal. That's unacceptable. The room fell silent. Danny fidgeted with her hands, tears brimming in her eyes as she remembered the humiliation. I was just waiting for ice cream, she said softly. I didn't do anything wrong. Michelle's eyes flicked to the girl, but she said nothing. Markham broke the tense silence. Mrs. Saunders, is there anything else you want to say? A real apology, maybe? Because from the department's standpoint, we do see this as a misunderstanding on your part. The evidence is clear. Michelle's jaw clenched. She forced herself to look at Danny. I apologize, she stammered, truly, to Danielle, for causing you distress. I guess I overreacted. Danny swallowed, meeting Michelle's gaze. She felt a swirling mix of emotions: anger, relief, and even pity. Thank you, she said softly, though the apology felt belated. Marcia studied Michelle's body language. The apology might not have been brimming with sincerity, but it was a start. Thank you for that, Mrs. Saunders, she said in a measured tone. I hope in the future you'll be more careful. Michelle bobbed her head, still avoiding direct eye contact. Yes, I will. Markham cleared her throat, looking relieved. All right, unless there's anything else, I believe that concludes the mediation. She shot Marcia an appreciative glance, as if silently thanking her for not escalating matters further. Mara gave a curt nod. We'll consider the matter settled for now, provided that no further issues arise. Then, with one final look at Michelle, she stood and guided Danny out of the room. Michelle remained seated, staring at the table, clearly shaken by the realization that she had tangled with an FBI chief's family. She exhaled shakily. How had things spiraled so far? A single phone call, fueled by prejudice, conscious or not, had nearly cost her dearly. Outside in the hallway, Danny let out a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. I don't know if that made me feel better, she confessed softly to her mom. I mean, she apologized, but Mara put an arm around her. Sometimes apologies aren't perfect, but it's a step. What's important is that you stood up for yourself, and now she knows there are consequences for making baseless accusations. Danny nodded, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. Deep down, she suspected she'd never forget this experience, but at least it might serve as a lesson for Michelle and for anyone else who thought an innocent child could be treated like a suspect without repercussions. If Michelle Saunders thought the matter was over, she was sorely mistaken. Word of the confrontation spread rapidly through Willow Creek, especially in the local social circles. Many residents, already aware of the incident, now learned that the girl's mother was an FBI chief and that a mediation had taken place. Michelle found herself the subject of hushed whispers at Manny's Brew, in the grocery store. Some neighbors avoided her gaze, while others openly criticized her actions. The local paper, the Willow Creek Observer, printed a small column about concerned citizen makes baseless call on child, later forced to apologize, though they didn't name her directly. People put two and two together. One afternoon, Michelle was in the produce aisle of Parker's grocery, trying to pick out ripe avocados, when she overheard a couple whispering. That's the woman who called the cops on that little girl. I'm telling you, said one. Michelle felt a wave of shame wash over her. She abandoned the avocados and made her way to the checkout counter, only to find the teenage cashier eyeing her with obvious disapproval. She mumbled a quick greeting, keeping her head down. Outside, a car honked and nearly grazed her as she tried to rush across the parking lot. She realized it was her friend Karen, who once tried to warn her, waiting to pick her up. Michelle hopped into the passenger seat, muttering a hurried apology. Karen gave her a pointed look. Michelle, your reputation is taking a big hit. This is exactly what I was worried about. Michelle sank into the seat. It's not fair. I made one mistake. Anyone could have done the same. Karen sighed. You called the police on an innocent child. My God, she's only 11, and her mother is an FBI chief. You're lucky you didn't get sued. Michelle stared out the window, refusing to answer. She felt trapped in a nightmare of her own making. A few weeks passed. Danny slowly returned to her normal routine, hanging out with Tess, going to the park, practicing her reading for a local book fair. Mara resumed her FBI duties, though she worked more from home to keep an eye on her daughter's emotional well-being. Meanwhile, Michelle tried to keep a low profile. She'd mostly retreated to her house, ordering groceries online and avoiding social events. Then one morning, she received a letter from the Homeowners Association. The HOA board had decided to review a complaint about her harassment of a neighbor's child. Although the Hamiltons hadn't filed a formal complaint with the HOA, some concerned residents had. The letter cited serious concerns regarding neighborly conduct and potential violation of community standards. Michelle's face burned as she read it. She realized that her own neighbors had essentially turned against her. She was summoned to the next HOA meeting to explain herself. If they found her behavior was in violation, she could face fines or other penalties. At that same time, her workplace also became aware of the incident. Michelle worked in the marketing department of a local firm, Willow & Company. They prided themselves on an inclusive corporate culture. When rumors reached the HR department, they began an internal review. She was called into a meeting with her supervisor, Andrew Carlson, and the head of HR, Lisa Wang. Andrew cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Michelle, we've received some concerning information. It's come to our attention that you were involved in an incident that may reflect poorly on the company's image." Lisa Wang nodded. "We take all allegations of discriminatory behavior seriously, especially as they pertain to our core values. We'd like to hear your side of the story." Panic flared in Michelle's chest. She tried to keep her voice steady. "I had a misunderstanding with a young girl in the neighborhood. I thought she was breaking into cars. It turns out she wasn't." Lisa's expression remained professional. "Were there any racial dynamics at play, as has been suggested by some of your neighbors?" Michelle's eyes flickered. "No, absolutely not. Andrew held up a hand. "Michelle, we're not here to judge your personal beliefs, but this could become a PR issue if it garners more attention. We can't have our employees perceived as engaging in racially biased behavior. The brand is everything in our line of work." Michelle felt her world closing in. She'd never imagined that one call, one overreaction, could threaten her job. "I understand," she said meekly. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Lisa handed her a brochure. "We're asking you to attend diversity and sensitivity training. It's mandatory if you want to continue working here. Furthermore, we strongly advise you to reach out and make amends in the community. The company will be monitoring the situation closely." Tears of humiliation stung Michelle's eyes. "Yes, I'll attend," she managed. Andrew nodded. "Good. We appreciate your cooperation. Now, let's try to put this behind us for everyone's sake." Michelle left the meeting with her career hanging by a thread and her personal life in shambles. This was more than just the cost of a hasty phone call, it was her entire life unraveling. Tess nudged Danny. "Hey, maybe we should go. It might be interesting." Danny shrugged, still a bit wary of public gatherings, but she found the concept appealing, a place where people could learn about accepting differences. Maybe that weekend, Mara encouraged Danny to attend, offering to go with her. "It could be healing," Marcia suggested. "You'll see that there are good people here who want to do better." At the forum, they found the Willow Creek Library's community hall bustling with residents, young, old, families, and even a few teenagers. Stationed at a table near the entrance was Michelle Saunders, looking uncharacteristically humble as she handed out informational brochures. She appeared to have volunteered or been compelled to volunteer. Marcia and Danny paused, exchanging looks of surprise, then they approached the table. Michelle spotted them and froze for a moment. It seemed she might look away, but then she mustered the courage to speak. "Agent Hamilton, Danielle," she began softly. I'm trying to help with this event. I want to learn and maybe undo some of the damage I caused." Danny studied Michelle, sensing the woman's discomfort. She also saw genuine remorse in her eyes. It wasn't the forced apology from the mediation this time.
Michelle appeared contrite, almost vulnerable. Mara remained composed. "It's good to see you here. I hope you'll find it worthwhile."
Michelle managed a small, timid smile.
"I'm attending all the sessions. I realize that I need to examine my own biases. I truly am sorry." She looked directly at Danny. "I know I apologized before, but it wasn't enough. I realize now how deeply I hurt you, and it's not just about you. My actions have repercussions for others, too." Danny's heart thumped. She found it hard to hold on to anger in the face of this new humility. I appreciate that," she said. "Thank you." Marcia nodded.
"It's a start, Mrs. Saunders. Real change requires more than words, but I'm glad you're here."
A tear slipped down Michelle's cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "I want to prove I can do better."
At that moment, a volunteer called for Michelle's help. She excused herself, leaving Danny and Mara alone with their thoughts.
"That was unexpected," Danny murmured. Mara placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder.
"It seems she's been forced to confront her actions.
Sometimes that's what it takes for people to evolve." Danny exhaled, feeling a strange sense of closure and cautious hope.
She wasn't ready to fully trust Michelle, but seeing her genuine remorse lifted a weight from her shoulders. Perhaps it was possible for people to change.
As the months rolled on, Willow Creek slowly moved past the incident.
Danny returned to her carefree self, laughing with Tess and diving into new mysteries at the library.
She also discovered a newfound passion for community advocacy, encouraged by her mom.
She started volunteering at a local youth group that focused on cultural awareness and self-confidence for kids of diverse backgrounds. Michelle, on the other hand, completed her mandatory sensitivity training at Willow & Company and continued to attend local diversity forums. She quietly joined a civic group working on bridging cultural gaps in the neighborhood.
While some neighbors remained distant, others recognized her attempts to change.
Over time, her relationships in the community began to mend, slowly, but genuinely. Marcia never forgot the pain her daughter endured. She occasionally had nightmares of a different outcome, one in which the responding officers weren't as fair, or Michelle's biases had led to a more dangerous confrontation. But she found solace in the fact that Willow Creek as a whole learned from the ordeal. The police department started implementing more robust training on bias. The local paper published several editorials on racial profiling.
In a quiet way, Danielle's terrifying moment had sparked a wave of positive change.
One Saturday afternoon, Agent Marcia Hamilton took Danny out for a special treat at Sweet Scoops, the very place where the nightmare had begun. Danny hesitated upon approaching the pink storefront, memories rushing back, but her mother squeezed her hand reassuringly. Inside, Mr. Guzman greeted them with a wide grin. "Good to see you both," he said, ushering them to the counter for free cones, his way of apologizing for what Danny had been through. As Danny licked her strawberry cone, she looked at her reflection in the store's window. She saw a girl who had survived fear, humiliation, and confusion, and had come out stronger for it. She also saw the reflection of her mother standing proudly beside her, unwavering support evident in her eyes. For a moment, Danny's thoughts drifted to the idea of joining the FBI someday, just like her mom. She imagined helping other kids who faced unjust situations, ensuring that the law protected them instead of punishing them. She turned to Marcia, her voice bright with renewed confidence. "Mom, if I ever join the FBI, I want to make sure no kid goes through what I did."
Mara smiled, wrapping an arm around her daughter. "Then you'll be exactly the kind of agent we need, Danielle Hamilton."
And in that moment, in the swirl of sugar-scented air and motherly pride, the painful incident faded into a life lesson, a stepping stone toward a better future for them all. Yet, from this turmoil, the Willow Creek community blossomed with renewed dialogue and understanding.
It wasn't just about one family's healing or one woman's apology, it sparked a collective shift. Officer training improved, youth groups flourished, and neighbors talked more openly about their differences.
If this story moved you, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to Dignity Diaries. You never know whose life might be touched by hearing about courage, accountability, and the power of choosing empathy over fear.